about the time we faced doom.
All right. Well, as I remember.
At Avenger headquarters.
Because united, the Avengers are strong.
Welcome to the Marvel D&2 Evolution podcast with myself, Jarian Gibson.
And I'm Alex Stroud.
I'm Jamie Smith.
And Andy is not joining us today, but we are doing our special Saturday stream. We're going to do some news, and we're going to chat about what's going on lately. So if you're out there joining us, welcome to the stream. And Andy may pop in, and we may have some other Mobmans from the group pop in. They all have the link. But those of you out there in the chat, welcome with us on your Saturday afternoon or evening or wherever your time zone you're in. So let's start with Alex. How you doing today, Alex?
I'm doing pretty good. Been a rainy Saturday for me, but I'm excited to talk about some of this new upcoming Marvel news, especially for some of the TV shows.
Nice. How about you, Jamie?
Nothing much. About yard work today. Quite warm, bit cloudy, but other than that, nothing much.
Nice. We do have, looks like RMC is with us. So hey, RMC, how you doing today?
What's up, RMC?
I think right now that's all we have right now with us. But let's go ahead and get started. So if any of the Modmans out there that are in the chat want to join us, it's in our Modman chat link. So you're happy to jump on the stream with us if you like. But let's go ahead and get started. So let's talk about the news of the week. First thing, Miss Marvel news. And this is the big one about her power set. So it seems that there's been some interviews between Kevin Feige and also between the creators of Miss Marvel. So we adapt the comics. It's not an exact translation. Kevin Feige told in an interview with Empire magazine, Kamala came about in a very specific time within the comic book continuity. She is now coming into a very specific time within the MCU continuity. And those two things didn't match. The new origins for Khan's powers look set to be part of the journey of the show. What we will learn about where those powers come from and how they come about is specific to the MCU, Feige teases. You will see the great comic splash panels and some of the action sequences. If you want big, giant hands and arms, well, they're here in spirit, if not in stretchy plastic type ways. He further goes on to say is that it taps into the future of her story as it connects to her other friends that she will meet up in the upcoming film, The Marvels, confirms Feige. She's interested in knowing, great, does that mean I'm Asgardian? Did I get hit with gamma rays? No, it's seemingly none of those things. It goes to her own past and heritage and lineage. And before I go on to address what the creators say, this was a big nod from the trailers where it said, where she said cosmic, right? And even in the trailers, you see there is some of the enlarged and beginning stuff, but it's not in the same usual ways. So before I go on to the creators, what are your all thoughts on that?
Are we allowed to talk about Multiverse of Madness? Can I say a little spoiler about that for something that kind of relates to this?
I think our spoiler alert for the group has ended. I think we're past that now. So I do have a couple things I will share for Multiverse of Madness. So go ahead. You're welcome to do it.
I was just going to say, I do find it kind of odd that we just saw Black Bolt in Multiverse of Madness, and then we get Miss Marvel, following, immediately right after. So it kind of gives me hope that she might be, an Inhuman. I'm still kind of hoping that, because, it kind of makes sense with the timing. And so maybe she's an Inhuman, and I do also find it odd that I guess maybe they're going to go with this theme of everybody with the name Marvel is going to have some kind of light-based power set or something, but yeah, I think it's kind of fitting, I guess, for the timing, since we just had Black Bolt to bring her show in, I guess, if she's going to be an Inhuman.
But do you think with Black Bolt, though, what happened in Multiverse of Madness, was that more of, Feige's kind of saying, here's a little tease here, but we're going to leave this alone for now and possibly come back to it later? Because I'm not sure if they're going to make her Inhuman. I'm also not sure if they're going to even do touching humans again. Before I go, continue. Monty's out there. So how you doing, Monty? And he says, Embiggening was always kind of a ripoff to Reed Richards' power set, which I think for casuals with Fantastic Four coming, it could be confusing. So that's a good point, Monty. And then also goes on to say is that I'm not married. I'm not married to the Embiggening. I just don't want her to be a ripoff of Captain Marvel. So I think we're going to get a balance of that. Maybe her powers, but not just the regular Embiggening, but more cosmic looking like.
Mm-hmm.
What are your thoughts, Jimmy?
That is very similar, like a Green Lantern sort of idea.
Yeah.
Especially the way the fist forms in the trailer that you see. It's obviously it's not Embiggening, but it's a giant fist. It's, you know what I mean? So it looks similar to like a Green Lantern outside. So.
Yeah, the powers look more like kind of like holograms almost. You know what I'm saying? Like it's kind of like something that it's I don't really know how to explain it, but like exactly like when she reaches out and grabs things, I always think of, like you said, Jamie, the Green Lantern thing where he like creates like the glove or creates the giant hand and grabs
the
somebody
constructs.
or something.
Yeah,
the constructs. Yeah, that's the exact word I'm looking for.
So the creators also chimed in on this as well. From what we've seen in the trailer, Kamala's powers looks a little bit different than they did in the comics. How did you approach to translating her powers to the screen? This is an interview with Entertainment Weekly. And the response was, obviously, so much of the show is an adaptation. And we thought it was important to make sure that her powers are linking to larger stories in the Marvel Universe. We want to make sure that there was a little bit more story to tell after the series. Obviously, she goes into the Marvels. The powers do look different, which is very controversial. I know people are like, how dare you change the powers? I know people are upset about it, but as someone who's probably one of the closest people to this character from the inception, I've spoken to Willow about this as well. I think Willow and I have always felt this made sense. This was the right move because there are bigger stories to tell. They go on to say it was really fun to give Kamala different powers, that big feel and a scope in cinematic in a different way. We can do a lot of fun things with her. I don't want to spoil too much about how she uses her powers, but they're fun and bouncy. And at some point, the essence of what the powers are in the comics is there, both from a metaphorical standpoint and from a visual standpoint. We are doing the Embiggen fist. We're doing the elements that make her feel and look kind of crazy, but also really cool. I think it's going to be familiar to people, but at the same time, different in a fresh and unique way. And this is directly from the creators that actually wrote her comics. So they're all in. RMC goes, I got Green Lantern vibes too. And then it looks like who's this comment here about the other one? It looks like Monty said this, says, hard light constructs like Green Lantern DC, I'm cool with that. So, it just wasn't something that, Kevin Feige or even the writers of the show are changing. This is direct from the horse's mouth, the people who created her.
I think the main aspect people were worried about was the message behind what her powers are. Her powers, the message about how she's not comfortable with her body, and that's the whole Embiggen side of thing. If the powers can still give that kind of message across, then surely there shouldn't be too much more concern for it. You know what I mean?
Yep, and I think they'll get the message across. It's a high school teenager, that whole phase through high school, everyone's awkward. So I think we're going to get that whole message across. And then RMC goes to say, what do I do with this thing? Here we go. The change makes sense. I get why people that are fans of her specifically are upset, though, which, I'm not upset about it. I've read her comic books. I even went back and reread her original run, where they go through and she had like the mist happen. She snuck out to a party. The mist happened. She had that dream where Captain Marvel was there. I'm sorry, it was Miss Marvel in the old black costume with the sachet, Iron Man and Captain America, and then she's like a big fangirl, and then just kind of goes through that. And even in that same series, she actually comes across Wolverine as well in that series. So I'm kind of excited to see it. But the leading lady herself, Iman Vellani, on her power changes, she says, I'm very possessive of Kamala. I think we stay true to what the comics brought. The themes have always been about identity and about marrying the 50 million things that make Kamala. For all I care, she could shoot sausages out of her fingers as long as she still goes on that self-discovery journey. And then she wants to talk about how filming Miss Marvel versus the Marvels was, because she's going to be in both. It was absolutely amazing, a completely different experience. you have the same amount of filming time almost to film a lot less content. So everything was more relaxed. And Brie and Tiana, so Captain Marvel and Monica Rambeau, were the most amazing support system. Just have to have people who have the same pains from doing stunts. We were just crying together. It was awesome. So, like I said, it sounds like everything is there. The core message is there. Everything else is there. So I don't think the power set changing is going to make any kind of big difference.
And I do have a dumb question because I don't have a lot of knowledge on Miss Marvel, but isn't she technically considered kind of like an outcast by the Inhumans because she's technically kind of like a new human because she went through Terrigenesis like later on in her life?
A little, yeah, sort of, but they also send Lockjaw to summon her, and Lockjaw also does kind of keep an eye on there. So that's the only thing that is sad to me, that if we don't get some kind of like end of the show season where some portal opens up, don't show Lockjaw, but just get the portal opening and her going somewhere, because those two are pretty much very tight in the comics and the cartoons and some of the runs. So, if they don't do Inhumans, at least try to give us Lockjaw in some way. I think would be a good way to round it out. But I don't know if they're going to touch past Multiverse of Madness. I don't know if they're going to touch Inhumans again.
Well, and Lockjaw fits with all these other, like, we've seen Alligator Loki, we've seen Throg, so, I mean, like, and there's others that I'm not even thinking of that I'm sure that, like, you can name from various other movies and shows. So, like,
Goose.
It's one of those things. Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
So, like, there's plenty other that, like, we can kind of relate to being similar in that aspect.
And you could even have Captain Marvel come across Lockjaw on her adventures, not make him a human, make him some kind of other species, and then she sends Lockjaw to go round up Miss Marvel to bring her to her because she's off doing other stuff and needs her help, or Caesar needs a trainer or something like that. So you could still do Lockjaw without Inhumans.
Pet Avengers too.
Yeah, there you go.
Yeah.
Any other comments on Miss Marvel before we move on to the next topic? So Moon Knight has been getting a lot of buzz too as well. The writers, producers, they've all been doing interviews. There's been some exclusive interviews out there. But early Moon Knight scripts included gore. So in an interview here, both a lot and a little. But the reality is what we had no idea. When we started working on the show, we didn't know when we were debuting. We always sort of assumed it would be later down the road, and we would sort of be coming out in fall of 2022. And we thought we would probably be following Thor: Love and Thunder. But at the same time, Thor didn't necessarily have a concrete release date either. Everything was sort of up in the air, and it's like we might be ahead of Thor or might be finishing up. So there was a different version of the script where the gods would sort of talk about this thing with Gore, the God Butcher, just happened, and now we've got this new problem. And there were other versions of the script where they sort of talked about, we're hearing rumors that gods are dying. This is not the right time to get involved. Like, we tried to have our cake and eat it too. For Jeremy Slater goes on to say, because this is from Jeremy Slater, we knew the general beats of what would happen in Thor: Love and Thunder, so that wouldn't be contradicting anything. But we had a version of the story that sort of teased Gore's arrival, and ones were sort of taking place the aftermath of that movie. Ultimately, at some point, Marvel just made the creative decision, you know what? We don't necessarily need this. The way that the Ennead scene ultimately panned out in episode 3, it didn't feel like there was an organic place to sort of drop in like, oh, by the way, this has nothing to do with the story we're currently telling, but there's a thing happening over here. I think Marvel's getting very smart about how they sort of work in those references and cameos, and they'll do it if it makes sense. They won't do it if they hurt the story, so they don't do it just for the sake of doing it. I think that was always the time where they felt like we're stretching to make this connection. We really don't need it. So that was interesting that Gore was thought about. They had the connection there. But they had to scrap it because of timing and what was going on. I want to give a shout out to Roxy. She's on. Hey, Roxy. Thanks for joining us today. And then Monty goes, oh, man, that would have been great, which I would have loved to see some kind of Gore reference. I've always said, just see how gods dying at the end of the show. Don't show Gore, just tease it, and then in Love and Thunder leave with have Thor investigating those Egyptian gods dying.
Yeah, and I mean, I think it also makes sense with the timing of where Love and Thunder was going to come at, with the Moon Knight just being right before that. Now, like, looking back at that, But it also, I feel like Marvel probably does this with a lot of scripts where they probably write something with like the intention of getting to one point, and then they probably change that script so many times and say, well, we're going to leave gore out there and still get there, but we're going to use this just to get there. Because like as great as that would have been, I felt like that may have taken away from Moon Knight and his introduction into the MCU versus like, the new Thor movie coming out down the road.
Yeah.
So all I'm taking away from that is the way they're talking sounds like Gore's supposed to survive Love and Thunder.
Yeah.
Possibly, maybe he's set up for, something coming more. So, let's see what Monty has to say here. Monty's got a good take here. Let's see if it's on the screen. I will die on this hill. Moon Knight being more connected to the greater MCU was to its detriment. Marvel is the longest story in history. It's been, it's at its best when it's interwoven with itself, even in slight mentions. And I agree, there should have been some way to connect the dots, some kind of thing to tie them into the MCU other than the astral plane and seeing the GRC logo. They should have had more. And then RMC goes on to say, it would have been really cool to get the reference, but at the same time, I'd rather they err on the side of caution with stuff like that. And honestly, I think this had to do with the whole coming out of the pandemic, timing, trying to get actors in. We saw one actor got switched out for Multiverse of Madness because of COVID. Mm-hmm. So it all could have been timing and the schedule and so forth. And then, hey, Barb's on with us too. Hey, Barb. And she says another post-credit scene missing then. So missed opportunities there. But here's some more connection news. Kit Harington's Dane Whitman was considered early on in writer's room for appearance. Mahershala Ali's Blade was off the table completely. So they never were going to bring Blade into the series, but they had Dane Whitman as possible early on in the scripts, which even just seeing Dane walking through Steven's museum, or just, Steven giving some kind of nod or some kind of hi, that would have been a great nod right there.
Yeah, and I feel like it would have been also kind of like a weird direction for Dane, though, after seeing him at the end of Eternals going to get the sword after, like, seeing Cersei, like, disappear, for him to just, like, pop up in Moon Knight, you know what I'm saying? Like,
maybe he's looking for information, though, or, maybe him and Blade are behind the scenes, and he's looking to check him out. Yeah. And then, Andy's on with us, too. Hey, Andy's in the chat. Monty goes, Dane makes sense because he lives in London. And then Andy goes, Dane was in London, so it makes perfect sense. Why isn't this clicking on here? There we go. So, I think it was a missed opportunity because you're right. Internals, he was in London, the whole thing there. Dane could have been investigating, maybe check out different museums about the origin of that sword and more stuff because, we have some what's going on here in the chat? Let me see.
Same.
Looks like stop copying me. So it looks like there's some good ideas there. And then I don't think it was the same museum. No, I don't think it was. I think it was different. So I think it was the same museum there, RMC. But yeah, doing some research, looking out, because after Cersei got taken away, he could be scrambling for information, and that kind of stuff. So Barb has a question here in the chat. Let me put this on. Will we have everything tied together, even if it's not mentioned now? Remember, 23 movies until Endgame. So I know at some point they're going to cross over. And I think the best way to cross over right now would to be just to look at forward, not backward, and maybe look at Werewolf by Night, which in the next piece here, Werewolf by Night was also pitched to be in Moon Knight. So Jeremy Slater wanted to say, in my pitch, one of the images that I used was a shot of Moon Knight fighting a giant 12-foot tall werewolf with glowing eyes, he says. I was like, look, yes, Moon Knight is a street-level vigilante guy. He can go up against purse snatchers and the drug runners and everything, but he's also a monster hunter, and that's how he was introduced. So I think they missed an opportunity there as well. Even a shot at the end of him fighting a werewolf or him chasing a werewolf as another post-credit scene to tie into Werewolf by Night. But they can still fix this by having him in Werewolf by Night as well. So what are you guys' thoughts on that?
Well, Marvel knew what they were doing when they gave us the Jackals in the Moon Knight series. Like, they were totally trying to, like, get us hyped up, because I know everybody was like, are those Jackals? Are those werewolves? Like, everybody was, like, arguing about that and stuff like that. And then you go back and you watch it now, and obviously they weren't werewolves. But, you know, it would have also been an interesting little thing to have Werewolf by Night appear in the Moon Knight series, because Moon Knight first appeared in Werewolf by Night, so it would have kind of been like a reverse of the comics happening here.
Yeah, and that'd been a great to do it. And even the first episode teased Werewolf by Night comic. You know, that was the free comic for that one. So,
or just the name drop of Jack Russell too.
Yeah,
Jack Russell. They could have just done that.
Barb had a comment here about the museums. So she goes, Dane and Cersei, same museum, National History 1. Stephen was the British Museum with the mummy. So different museums there. And then, so we have that one going there. Any other thoughts on Moon Knight? I have one more. They did come out and say that Jake Lockley was there the whole time. And I've seen Monty's comments on the post about this, and even RMC's, and I think Justin's as well, where it was like, you know, kind of no shit, Sherlock. He's kind of been there the whole time. We all knew that. 3 mirrors. Every time he blacked out, there were subtle hints there.
That was
so.
Yeah. Unfortunately, I feel like we probably shouldn't have had to have waited till the very end to actually see his character like kind of flushed out to the surface, you know. But because that just makes me feel like we didn't get enough of that character, and we need a season 2 of Moon Knight.
Yep.
You know,
and RMC goes, I said all along in episode 1, which, you know, he's been there.
So what would you think would be the next possible project for Moon Knight to show up in?
I could see Werewolf by Night. I think that's an obvious one. But RMC real quick, so the blackouts made it obvious. And then so I think this is Monty saying, yep, that's Monty as well, saying it was pretty obvious and it was weak until final reveal. So the Spanish thing, I don't think he spoke Spanish in the comics. I don't remember it. And that's why I kept laughing and calling him a Kobo, because I don't remember him being...
No, he's a New York cop.
Yeah. It was like a New York accent, wasn't there something?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
So no Spanish there. But yeah, for me, the next project, obviously, Werewolf by Night. Maybe he could pop up in Blade next year. Have some crossover there. I'm trying to think what else is on the slate. Maybe some kind of hint. Depends when She-Hulk is done. I
mean, I hope that,
you know,
that we wouldn't have to wait till a Midnight Suns thing.
Yeah.
You know?
Or,
like that would.
Yeah.
That could be a really long time.
Could he possibly? He's not really. No, doesn't matter. Never mind. Doesn't matter.
So, any other thoughts on Moon Knight before we move on to Fantastic Four news? It's kind of tied to Moon Knight.
I don't think I want to add anything else.
Okay, so Fantastic Four news. Moon Knight producers Grant Curtis and Nick Pepin will help to produce Marvel Studios' Fantastic Four movie. So we have producers now. We still don't have anything as far as director yet or the cast. And I'm going to go ahead and make a guess here about when we'll get an announcement on cast and possibly director. D23 is coming up on September 9th of this year. San Diego Comic-Con is coming up on July 21st of this year. And from some of the stuff that I've seen out there from the scoopers, it sounds like there's going to be some big announcements between the two. I'm going to guess maybe San Diego Comic-Con, we get the director. And by D23, we get the cast. And we probably also get more of the Marvel slate of coming up and some kind of more things on fluid dates. What are your guys' thoughts on that?
I feel like for Fantastic Four, that is going to be one of the toughest castings probably in the next few years with Marvel. Because, you know, we've seen several Fantastic Four movies and nobody's really ever been, I think, really particularly happy with those characters and the portrayals of them in those movies. Good actors, it's just the movies themselves weren't the best. So I think like they have some baggage there that they have to kind of overcome, and I think that these movies need to be something kind of different for Marvel's first family. Like they need to stay away probably from like Galactus and Doom and things like that as villains, and kind of create some kind of like new formula that hasn't been seen on screen. You know?
I think it definitely needs to be a slow burner because they're going to be there for a while.
Yeah. And
Yeah.
I actually really like that 60s idea of them being from the 60s, because then that just kind of feels like, you know, Reed's such a smart guy, like even in the modern world he would still be so smart even if he was from the 60s. So you know, it's kind of one of those things where I think it would work and fit well.
Yeah, I think it goes with our theory that we discussed back in one of the quiz nights. Me, you, and Ray Mark discussed that theory about when they could show up and being tied to Hank Pym, and possibly that accident that in Endgame that they teased with Hank Pym about his glowing and spilling. He took off running, where a similar accident could have happened, and Fantastic Four got trapped inside the quantum realm, or the negative zone being an area of the quantum realm, and you know, having this tied to Quantumania. So I definitely think that's the route they could be going. But yeah, I do think they need to crawl, walk, or run with Fantastic Four, and not come in guns blazing with some big threat like Galactus or Doom or anything like that. You know, change things up and go that way, build them up. You know, hopefully Doom comes in through, like I've always said, Wakanda Forever, whether he's in credit scene or teased through other things about Averia or something like that. So, you know, we'll see. And I do have some Wakanda Forever news as well coming up. So we'll tie into that. I want to circle back to the chat, though. RMC is right. It probably was a nod to his heritage because he is Cuban and Spanish, I think. I know he's definitely Spanish heritage. And he actually, changed his name up to be on screens. It's actually a longer name. My wife was actually telling me this about all this as well. She actually went and researched it while the Moon Knight series was happening. And then another question here about Black Knight that Monty's asking. Anything about Black Knight? And then I don't know anything about Black Knight now. So that's another one where we don't know where he's going to show up or when he's going to be connected to. He could be another one that we don't see until Blade, because Blade was the recruiting at the end of Eternals. So maybe we see him in Blade. There was some stuff that I was reading today that Blade could be going the Tomb of Dracula route possibly for the movie. So we'll see what happens there. But yeah, definitely, I don't know when we'll see Black Knight. I'm trying to think where else he could pop in right now in the current set of things. Maybe we see him with Fantastic or with Quantumania 2 as well, possibly, or something, or I don't know, Loki season 2, maybe another place he could pop up possibly. So yeah, I'm not sure about Black Knight. But speaking of, go ahead.
I was just gonna say it would be interesting, and I really hope that they don't do this, but I think it would be kind of like an interesting little connection here if they made the sword not the Necro sword for Gore, but they actually made Gore come to Earth for Black Knight's sword or something like that, you know, in Love and Thunder, and that would be kind of like his next little appearance.
There you go. Yeah.
Yeah. So, and that's why Gore comes to Earth, and that's where Thor runs into Gore, and yada yada yada.
So Barb's asking, is there a plot for Quantumania already? Which I don't know the full plot there. I just know that it's going to involve Kang, and I'm not sure which variants of Kang, but I know this is going to be Kang's movie debut. I'm just not sure what the rest of it is. I'm not sure if anyone's not going to make it out. But I do know they did change up Scott's daughter, Cassie Lang, to a different actress, and you know, hopefully we'll see her become Young Avengers stature, some tie to Kate Bishop because they are tight in the comics. So we'll have to see what happens with those two.
Wasp is still going to be in it, right?
Yes. It's Ant-Man and the Wasp Quantumania. And I remember too, they did change the dates. So January of next year, they did swap dates with the Marvels, and I don't know if it's because of plot lines or storylines, or you know, one of the things I did read is that Quantumania is definitely further along than the Marvels. So we'll see.
Which I think we spoke about this the other day, but I feel like that also has an impact on the plot of Loki now as well. You know, since Kang is in Quantumania, and we just saw his statue at the end of Loki. So,
is Jimmy still with us? I think he froze.
No, I'm still here.
Okay, we hear you. Your video's froze though, so we hear you though. That's good.
No, I'm still here.
All right, cool. Next piece of news: Elizabeth Olsen will not appear in House of Heartness. She wanted to say, "I mean, I would do anything with Han. Yeah, no, I'm not appearing in it. Not as far as I'm aware. But I love that woman so much. That entire show was just filled with lots of joy. It was great." Which House of Heartness could be something that we see for some past stuff. So maybe come across other characters too. So it might be a connection there with House of Heartness. I just don't have a date for it. RMC has a comment. Go ahead before I get to RMC's comment. Go ahead.
I was just gonna say, isn't House of Heartness supposed to be kind of more like a musical too, kind of
That's
style?
what I thought as well, but I've heard rumors about that, but nothing confirmed right now.
Okay.
Circling back to Quantumania, RMC has a comment. So I bet we hear more about tiny civilizations in the Quantum Realm, which I definitely think so. There definitely was a city there that we saw when they went to rescue Janet. And then who's this one from?
Must be Andy.
Andy. Yep, Andy's in the chat, and he goes, "Still reckon they missed a beat, not having Scott show up at the end of Hawkeye and fix that little truck for Clint, and say to Kate, 'Hey, you're really getting well with my daughter,'" which I absolutely agree 100% with that one, Andy. You're spot on with that one. And then Barb goes, "Please no musical for House of Heartness."
And I agree with that.
Yeah, I agree with it as well. So the next piece was so Disney had their latest earnings call, and Bob Chapek confirmed that Black Panther: Wakanda Forever is still on track for later this year. So no changes there. Still on track. That's good, and that's where I hope we get some kind of post credits or some kind of nod to kind of start to get the ball rolling with Doom.
Was there fear that it might have some sort of impact, that it would be pushed back?
So this is one where they shut down. Remember, they shut down Christmas for a while. They had some COVID on set stuff. They shut down for a while. They got things back. They had some reshoots. I know they were shooting in Puerto Rico as well. So there was some flux there, with the schedule, but it sounds like everything's on track.
Okay. I just didn't know if something else came up or anything like that. Yeah, okay.
Monty's got a question here in the chat. Does anyone else feel like Phase 4 is a bit disconnected so far? Like, how will Eternals connect to things going forward? Shang-Chi, Moon Knight, Kate Bishop, lots of characters I feel can't really predict how they'll be going forward. So that's an interesting question for Monty. And it some things do feel disconnected while others do feel connected. So Shang-Chi, for example, we saw Banner and Captain Marvel show up in the end. So there could be some ties there. Maybe Shang-Chi's on the cosmic route with the 10 rings. But so there's some connection there. Eternals, we saw the Blade connection in the post credits, so that could tie in there. I don't know where we'll see Eternals next, but I think Marvel might be on a pivot here to going down that horror route, because we have Wear It by Night coming, we have Multiverse of Madness, we have Man-Thing coming. So we have some things there. House of Heartness. There's big rumors on Ghost Rider being introduced. There's been a lot of chatter of Midnight Suns, so I think they're trying to introduce the horror side of things, but I think there's going to be some connection there. We might not see it all now, but we'll see how it goes. And then, let me see here. RMC goes, I feel like it's all about transitioning characters, lots of emotional traumas too, which is a great point. And then also including intros to new ones, Black Knight, Shang-Chi, Moon Knight, Eternals. And what else we have here? I think this is Monty again, or this is Barb. Bruce met Shang-Chi. He's in She-Hulk. Probably in contact with Hawkeye. Heard about New Vigilante Town at Moon Knight. He'll bring everyone together. So, there could be some ties there. We just haven't seen them yet. We'll have to wait and see how they do. Might not be clear for all of them. Some are clear, but some aren't so clear.
I think there's going to be.
Go ahead, Jamie.
I feel like there's going to be more than one path to go down here, and it's going to, I think just now it's a case of connecting the connections, because I think we need to establish all those different routes that are going, which I'm sure at some point they'll all eventually come back together as well.
Yeah.
And then do it again, but it seems like there's going to be a lot more paths we're going than we did before Endgame. We had 2-3 lot of paths. I feel like there's going to be a lot more different and so far apart, and it's just connecting those new new branches together themselves.
Mm-hmm.
So there's a lot of new ones. There's the ones that will always continue. So I think that then it's just as Adam says, transitioning into these new branches that they're trying to make.
Yeah,
Yeah.
and I think it's all going to come down to Secret Wars at some point. They're going to all come back together, but they might be on their paths. You might have cosmic, street level, horror, mystical, so different things.
I also can't help but notice how many of these projects like kind of carry the, I guess you can say, kind of like the theme of a lot of, I guess, like history, and that's both like MCU history and real world history as well. But I mean, like when you watch Eternals, we see the Eternals go through like thousands of years of living on Earth. In Shang-Chi, we have the Ten Rings that are literally like ancient and nobody knows where they came from or how old they are. Moon Knight, we know that there's been several versions of Moon Knight through the ages because of Khonshu. He's obviously been like pulling people. So I feel like there's like this kind of like very light connection to time. Maybe that's because of Kang coming.
Yeah,
in the
that's a good
future.
point.
Mhm.
Time's
Yeah,
a good theme.
Yeah, so like maybe that's what it is, time, history, whatever, but maybe it's just world building, I don't know.
And you could even have Eternals and Moon Knight crossover at some point. One of the previous avatars as well through history. We saw what they teased Excalibur in one of on the ship, and other things too as well. So that could be also there also. Jamie, Barb agrees with your it'll take longer, everything to tie in. And then RMC goes, so ready for Secret Wars, but don't want them to rush it. Not ready yet. We need mutants still. Got to have a full house before the war. And he also says good points, Jamie, as well. Yeah, you saw the introduced mutants here, and that's going to be a tricky one. We'll see how that goes. I don't know if that's going to be just cartoon for now, or if cartoon's going to cross over or what, but yeah.
Or if the cartoon will kind of lay some foundation for the same universe that we kind of see in the MCU for them. You know what I'm saying?
Because we got the theme song with Professor X and
cover
your ears.
I mean, they gave it to us.
Yeah. Anyways, we're gonna move on to some Waldron quotes about Multiverse of Madness, and I think our group is out of the spoiler ban, at least for this. Putting the spoiler alert you can do now.
Yes.
So if you haven't seen Multiverse of Madness, I would stop listening now for a few minutes, unless you don't care about some spoiler things. RMC goes, that's my thinking, Alex. And we heard the cartoon theme of Professor X when he came out for the Illuminati. So there's that. But Waldron did say on Phase 4, which goes into our topic here, where are things going? And it could be multiversal. So Waldron on Phase 4, growing multiversal threats. And there's the threat, and it's there, and now it's out there. There's a multiversal threat in the same way that when the MCU first went cosmic many years ago, there was the teed up threat of Thanos. Now it's probably a matter of you're setting up some multiversal threats on the board, whether it's Kang, incursions, whatever. It'll be interesting to see how those things come together. So it sounds like, to go with your time theme, it's multiversal, which makes sense. And incursions were something they brought up in Multiverse of Madness. And we'll see what happens. We do know incursions can destroy other universes, as what happened to some in there. Let me see here from the chat. Monty said he's so ready for time runs out and incursions and have a Secret Wars 2015 come out of that, which, like I said, all roads are leading to Secret Wars. Waldron went further to talk about Rintrah, because we didn't see a lot of Rintrah in Multiverse of Madness. He goes on to say there's some Rintrah on the cutting room floor, but look, that's just meat on the bone for the next go around. So it sounds like there's also more Rintrah coming, and that goes with our spoiler review that we did earlier this week of Multiverse of Madness. That Rintrah was one of the major cuts on the film, not all those cameos that everyone wanted to have. So, but it sounds like we have Rintrah coming. He also discussed 616 Mordo as well. So the main universe from Doctor Strange 1 Mordo. Yeah, there was, and we talked about that history and what had happened. We explored ways that would be interesting to intertwine with this story, but ultimately it felt like the story was left for another day. He's out there. What happened between them, we don't know, but I am certain we will find out. So that was another thing that I reported in our review for Doctor Strange, that was another major thing that got cut, was Mordo 616. Some more story on that. So it sounds like they're saying that for later also. Let me see here. We have a comment from Monty.
He's making a good point.
Yeah, didn't the incursions actually start? Did Sinister Strange live in a universe where an incursion happened? So we're already yep. So Sinister Strange did live in a universe with one. The 838 Strange for the Illuminati, he was causing incursions, and that's why the Illuminati was so against any kind of travel, multiversal travel, and that kind of stuff, because a universe was actually destroyed because of, I believe, Strange's travels. He caused an incursion that destroyed a universe. And so they're happening. We saw in the post credits that Clea came and said, "You caused an incursion. Let's go fix it." Which, to me, I think Strange caused an incursion in the first Doctor Strange movie when he went to the Dark Dimension to do the time loop with Dormammu. So that's why I 100% think that Doctor Strange 3 is going to be Doctor Strange in the Dark Dimension. So
I feel like us seeing Nexus events in the TVA was kind of like our soft intro into incursions in a way, because incursions are kind of like a universe size thing, whereas like Nexus events are kind of like one choice being different, So I don't know.
Could the branch clipping they were doing, the TVA was doing, were to prevent those incursions from exploding those universes? There could be some connection there, because we saw what happened when the branches went wild and what happened with the multiverse. I wonder if there's some tie over there with that, between incursions and branches and the TVA clipping branches.
I mean, maybe there's some thing where, like, whenever you have two universes that kind of like have people that go back and forth between them, maybe it causes them to get drugged together or something. We haven't really seen any like long-term effects of what all this multiverse travel causes on the multiverse yet in the MCU. So I'm sure it's going to have a negative impact, because it seems like everybody's kind of hurting the multiverse. We've seen it fracture in Loki. We've seen it kind of change a little bit in Multiverse of Madness, and we saw one character talk about leaving footprints and how that basically causes incursions to happen, and how one universe must be destroyed and for one to live, basically. So
RMC goes, Secret Wars gives me hope that we'll eventually get Wastelanders, which that's a good one too.
Yeah, that is a good one.
Also, we have some Deadpool stuff here from Waldron as well. Yeah, we talked about it. I think we talked about everything in this movie, so it would have been crazy to not raise it, but it ultimately didn't feel like the right place. But yeah, of course, we talked about it. So, so it looks like a lot of cameos they did talk about, but some didn't happen. And I'll say one more thing that I shared to the page earlier today, is that Daniel Craig was originally going to be Baldur the Brave on the Illuminati in Multiverse of Madness, but because of COVID and travel, he did not do it, and they changed the role to Krasinski doing Mr. Fantastic. The other thing too there is that Krasinski doing Mr. Fantastic was all green screen work. He never was on set. So I think they still could have done Craig as well, but he wasn't traveling because of the pandemic. But that's what I read today.
I'm gonna assume Daniel Craig stays in the States now, because didn't they film it in London anyway?
Yes, they did film in London.
Yeah. So he mustn't live in London anymore.
Yeah, the Marvels, Quantumania, and Multiverse of Madness all filmed in London. So that's a good point. Or he could have been somewhere else where he couldn't travel.
Yeah,
maybe.
Yeah.
So that's all I have on anything spoiler-ish for Multiverse of Madness. So if you had your earmuffs on, you can take them off now. And we'll move on to some cancellations here. So sounds like Hulu is probably done with any Marvel content. MODOK was canceled after one season, and there's still no word on Hitmonkey second season. But they did have a Howard the Duck and also Tigra and Dazzler animated shows planned as well. But they were scrapped before airing. There was a plan to basically have all four shows cross over in a series called The Offenders.
The offenders.
Yeah, so that didn't happen.
You think that's a consolidation play to eventually maybe move everything over to like a Disney Plus? Because I know Disney's doing that thing where they kind of are going to do like more of like an adult section
Yeah.
supposedly in the future. So maybe that's like Marvel trying to just put all their items in
yeah.
one box, you know?
Yep, I agree exactly. Because I know there was rumors for a while about a new platform before they had parental controls, and then possibly using Hulu, and then they brought parental controls onto Disney Plus, and so I think everything's going to be on Disney Plus, like you said. I think it's consolidation.
Yeah.
Speaking of consolidation, RMC agrees with you. I think it is, Alex. So RMC agrees as well. But speaking of consolidation, so also during the investors call, ending licensing deals early to move shows to Disney Plus cost Disney $1 billion. During the quarterly investors call, it was said they recognized revenue reversal of $1 billion related to early termination of content licensing agreements with a customer in order to make content available on their own direct-to-consumer services. To me, this sounds like a big chunk of that is Netflix Marvel. Because what happened this last quarter, Netflix Marvel shows got taken off Netflix. They're on Disney Plus now. So I think a big chunk of that was ending that deal early, and I wonder what else they get as well from that.
$1 billion,
RMC,
though.
Yeah, $1 billion.
Yeah, $1 billion.
RMC goes doing the same now, canceling stuff. Or sorry, DC doing the same stuff now, canceling stuff on different networks to put under one roof. Like you see a lot of stuff on CW is getting canceled right now. So that makes a lot of sense. And they're trying to maybe consolidate to HBO Max, maybe, and have that their platform.
Which it's weird because but there's shows like Stargirl that I've been seeing some things about, like apparently they're hinting at it might get canceled at some point in the near future, and Stargirl is made by HBO Max, but it appears on the CW now. So it's kind of weird how they do that. Same thing with Superman and Lois. I think it is also made by HBO Max and appears on the CW. But
what's even funnier is that all these other shows getting canceled, but they're still trying to move forward with the Powerpuff Girls.
Yeah.
Make it make sense. So
yeah. And what's her name? The girl that played Quake left that show, did she not?
Chloe Bennett. Yeah, she left the project. So everyone thought she's playing Quake in Multiverse of Madness. Here we go. But nope, that was not the reason why she left. So I do have some She-Hulk She-Hulk news. And so we talked about earlier where Moon Knight could show up, where other people could show up. So the rumors before were She-Hulk was pushed to 2023. Those were false rumors. There's a new report out that came out today that the show will release on August 17th. So I know right now we're kind of in that lull of Disney content until Miss Marvel comes out. And then right after Miss Marvel, we're going to have She-Hulk. So... And that's supposed to be, I think, a 10-episode run, about 30 minutes-ish, like a sitcom style, I believe.
Mm-hmm.
And so that's the August 17th, Wednesday. It sounds like we're going to get She-Hulk then. That's when we can see Moon Knight again. I know we're going to see Banner again. There's rumors of Daredevil as well being in the series. So be interested to see who all is in that series.
It's weird too because that's going to be kind of like a very fourth wall breaking series, I feel like. So maybe that's more for the sitcom style of why that's going to be that way, other than and it'll be really interesting because like we've seen the Deadpool movies, but I don't really think we've seen fourth wall breaking really officially in the MCU, and it'll be She-Hulk doing it before we actually see Deadpool doing it in something of his own,
I got some kind of weird feeling that She-Hulk is going to be like Seinfeld. I don't know why. I just keep thinking that.
Well, I mean, it would also be just like a complete curveball if they have her break the fourth wall like at the end of the show in like an end credit scene, and then Deadpool walks in at the same time and breaks the fourth wall. Like that would be completely funny. Yeah.
RMC goes lots of rumors about She-Hulk. So the last piece of news before we have open discussion to round things out is the Conan licensing is moving on from Marvel. July's Conan issue, maybe Marvel's last. The European company, which I think is a Swedish company, holds the rights and will start publishing their own Conan comics. This will not impact past Marvel Publishing's only things after the July issue. which is interesting because that's another reason why that in Multiverse of Madness we got Gargantos instead of Shuma Gorath because of that same rights issue. So, I was hoping at some point we get Conan possibly, in the MCU, but unless something happens or some deal is worked out, it doesn't seem like we're going to see any more Conan tied to Marvel after July of this year.
Will that impact any other characters related to him that we can think of, like potentially?
I'm
down
trying to
the
think.
road?
That's a good question. I'll have to do some research on that. Because I know right now Conan and Shuma, I think any talks of Crimerians possibly will be impacted.
Because
I think there's a new Red Sonja project coming out too as well, but not Marvel, but just the new Red Sonja project.
Because they kind of do that thing where they put characters underneath umbrellas. I mean, like, you've got all the Spider-Man characters, like Black Cat and all those characters kind of underneath that, like, Spider-Man umbrella, Silver Sable, and, yada, yada, yada. So, like, it would kind of make sense, I guess, if they did that, but who knows?
Yeah. On the bright side of this, we can get the Predator in the MCU now.
Yeah. And there's issues coming out where they're crossing over too, so I'm
really
looking forward to those.
read some of them. Yeah.
I wouldn't mind seeing an animated series of that. On Disney Plus, the Predators versus the Marvel, or versus the Avengers. So I know there's like a Blade one. I think there's a Black Widow one. I'll have to go look at all the stuff, but I'm looking forward to that series coming out.
Like the Predators from like Predators versus Aliens.
Yeah.
Which that's so weird because like DC has done a thing before where they did a crossover where Batman fought the Predator. So it's kind of a weird thing, but
I remember seeing that fan-made YouTube video a couple of years back where I think that Batman was fighting the aliens or was it the Predator, one of the two. And actually, it was pretty well done too. Fan-made video. So.
Yeah, a lot of those superhero beatdown videos. I think there's one of the Predator versus Wolverine. That one looks really realistic and is really actually good.
Yeah, the Wolverine suit's awesome.
Yeah, it's actually like comic accurate. It's like the yellow and blue and black suit.
So I got a question now then. That's all I have for the news today. So we're kind of open discussion for the last few minutes here. So speaking of Wolverine, there was a lot of rumors around Wolverine showing up Multiverse of Madness, which did not happen. Do you think that Wolverine will be the first official? I'm saying official because we've had some hints about mutants in the MCU already. But do you think Wolverine will be like the first? Well, I guess not the first. He won't be the first, but will be the next official mutant in the MCU because officially Professor X is the first mutant in the MCU now with Multiverse of Madness. So do you think he'll be the next one, or do you think they're going somewhere else?
I don't know. I mean, they could go tons of different avenues, but I do think it would have been really interesting we saw those helpers and stuff in Multiverse of Madness. Obviously, we watched Logan. We saw that Wolverine was kind of like an aide to Charles Xavier. It would have been funny to see like Logan just kind of walk out from around the corner and be like, and this is my good friend James Logan or whatever, like, and everybody be like, what? Like, never expected that coming, and have him kind of be like a helper for Charles Xavier.
So RMC thinks he'll be the first big one.
Could Rogue be one in the Marvel?
He goes, you're right about the Professor. Which that was my next question. I think Rogue could be one for the Marvels. Because that's how she got her powers, and maybe there's some conflict there between her and Captain Marvel, and maybe we leave the Marvels with the crippled Captain Marvel of her powers, and we have Spectrum or whatever they're gonna go with for Monica, and then we're gonna have Miss Marvel. So they could do Rogue. Rogue would be an interesting one to do for the Marvels. Yeah, it sounds like. Go ahead.
I was just gonna say they could even just introduce her in like a post-credit scene, even at the end of that movie. They don't even have to like make her like an antagonist at all to Captain Marvel and do any of that. They could make that like They could make like the third Captain Marvel film about her and Rogue, kind of Rogue taking her powers and everything.
The other one I could see is Mystique, and Mystique all of a sudden uncloaking and showing herself where she was someone major this entire time.
Yeah. Like one of the World Security Council members or something like that. Like somebody.
Or president.
yeah, somebody who's been like hidden in the background, manipulating everything. But then, does that mean that she's tied to like Magneto potentially too, and
They they could do
Brotherhood?
without Magneto though. They could do without him. Depends what route they
Mhm.
go. Because remember we saw at the end of Days of Futures Past where she was tied to Wolverine instead of being tied to um, Magneto after that. After her and Magneto split, and she was basically Stryker on the boat
Mhm.
after they got him out of the water.
Yeah.
So you could do that. RMC has a question here saying, is this will they use multiverse route or Eternals? Which they could do multiverse route because we saw Professor X and that's the first pathway to mutants right there in Multiverse of Madness. So it could be from 838 we could see mutants based in, or we could see Eternals because we know what Eternals through history and that background there. So it depends. I almost wonder if I know it's been said that Feige is a big fan of the Savage Land, and I
Mhm.
wonder if it's going to come through the Savage Land or have a Savage Land project being the first major mutant project in the MCU.
Yeah. I mean, I could also see, and I really hope that they wouldn't do this, but you know how like the Inhumans were manipulated by the Kree
Mm-hmm.
to like maybe the X gene was implanted in humans by the Kree in the MCU. They could kind of put a little weird twist on that, do that, and that's how the X gene got to Earth and has been here all along.
Yeah.
I don't know.
So there's plenty of ways they can do it. They have a full roster to pick from to bring in. That they have all the Fox stuff, so they're not limited.
Mhm.
So they kind of have sky's the limit on what they could do there.
Oh, and back to the first mutant thing. If Namor is technically a mutant, he might be the
Oh,
next one that we see
yes,
too.
good
So
point.
yeah.
Yeah, because we know right now that it doesn't seem like anytime they're going to tie Wanda to mutants. I think WandaVision pretty much killed that with her
Mhm.
being chaos magic.
Yeah, I mean they leaned
So
really hard into the magic on
yeah,
that.
so
Like
yeah,
even her like probability hex powers, they were even like, oh yeah, that was the magic blooming,
yep,
in you. So
yeah. I think her and Quicksilver, they're not going to be mutants tied. They're not going to be Magneto tied. None of that. I think we've gotten the story on them,
mhm.
which is kind of sad because I don't think we'll get a House of M or anything like that arc with her, or any of those type of things. So
Yeah, that is unfortunate, but it is
good,
what it
good call
is.
on Namor though.
Yeah, when does that come out?
November, I think.
November. Okay,
Yeah, I think it's November. Let me double check.
so we've got like 6 months, but I mean, I know we've talked about the wings and stuff on Namor, and they've already talked about some stuff, and I know his mutant ability is to fly, but it doesn't seem like he's going to be able to do that based on things that I've heard. So
He can glad cost water with him,
yeah.
which is funny because I just watched the Fantastic Four cartoon, with Namor as well, and he was like, "Sue, I'm getting that for show." The way he acted in the cartoon, he was like head over heels for Sue Storm in that cartoon. I was cracking up laughing. November 11th is the release date for Wakanda Forever.
Yeah, that's not that far away.
Yeah. And right here we have a question in the chat. Can she still be a mutant and use chaos magic? She could. I
Mhm.
don't think they're going to wreck on her as a mutant, though. I think they've done what they want to do with her right now. And so I don't think we see Wanda again, Barb, I don't think she'll be tied to anything along those same lines. I think they'll keep her on the mystical witch magic side.
Her mutant
Yeah.
powers would always secondary anyway.
Yep.
Mhm. Just like Namor.
Yep. So about 90 seconds left. Any closing thoughts in the last 30 seconds before I wrap things up?
No, I don't think so.
Okay. Well, thank you for joining us on our Saturday news edition stream. We missed Andy today. Also to tell you that there'll be no stream tomorrow. So we'll see you next weekend. We did record our Multiverse of Madness review on Wednesday this past week. And that should be out Monday, most likely. Our regular drop time of episodes, with this one shortly after. Remember, that one is spoiler filled. So if you haven't seen Multiverse of Madness, you don't want to be spoiled. Don't watch that episode until you see it. Thank you, everyone, for joining us today, and we'll see you next Sunday.
Thank you, guys.
Have a good one.
Yeah.
Why don't you tell him about the time we faced
All right. Well, as I remember,
at Avenger headquarters?